up on this program, competing in the high-tech marketplace. It's tough, even with products like Sci-Tech's fluid level monitor and the Brewer ozone spectrophotometer. Also, a man who comes up with some of those high-tech ideas. And Tech, another small company competing in the business of electronics and custom manufacturing. As well, technology of another kind. The Toxicology section of the RCMP Forensic Lab. These stories on A Fine Science with Holly Preston.
Even though Saskatchewan has a small population, it's very active in high-tech developments. There are many ambitious young companies, especially in Saskatoon, but no matter how good they are or how good their product is, it's difficult to get established.
The primary problem is identifying markets, identifying market potential, and raising capital and getting young companies going. Sci-Tech does the full spectrum. We're, I guess, in our 5th year now. We're 30 employees, actively looking for investment capital to move our company into the next stage of manufacturing and marketing. We license products from outside individuals as well as develop products internally. And we have 2 new products that will be coming on stream over the next couple of years that are licensed from another individual. Well, our company's primary objective is to design and license, manufacture and market instruments for scientific and industrial applications. And our 2 most successful products to date are the Brewer ozone spectrophotometer for measuring upper atmospheric ozone, or atmospheric ozone. And the other one is the PetroTag system, which is used for measuring the volume or height of refined petroleum products stored in storage tanks. The ozone spectrophotometer is an optical instrument that tracks the sun, and if you can envision a column of air about 2 inches in diameter between the Earth and the sun, the instrument essentially sits there and looks for the absorption of certain frequencies or wavelengths of light, and from those absorption ratios it determines the amount of ozone containing that column of air.
Scientists are concerned about the decline of ozone, which shields the Earth from the sun's ultraviolet rays.
Well, the Brewer ozone spectrophotometer was originally developed by Atmospheric Environmental Services in Toronto and was then licensed to us through the Canadian Patents Development Limited. And this was about 4 years ago. And since we've taken over the manufacturing and marketing of that product, and with a lot of assistance from Atmospheric Environmental Services in Toronto, we have installed quite a number of ozone sensing stations throughout the world. The PetroTag system is a pressure sensing device, and we have a little device that fits right into a storage tank, and essentially hoses, and then using those hoses we transmit the pressure contained at various places in the tank back to some electronics. The electronics then converts that to a volume or height measurement. Conventional measuring techniques are not usable because it's difficult to mix electricity and gasoline, so you have to invent techniques that are very safe when dealing with hazardous fuels. The standard in the industry right now is use a dipstick, and a dipstick is just the person climbs up the tank and uses a long rod, sticks it in the tank, and he gets an accuracy of plus or minus 5%. And our system gives an accuracy of plus or minus 0.1%. So the user has much better inventory control over his product. The PetroTag system is essentially composed of 3 elements, one of which is a sensor that goes into the storage tank. And here we have a model of a storage tank. The sensor is essentially dropped in from the top of the tank and lowered to the bottom, and connected to the sensor are 3 air lines, or gas lines if you wish, which run back from the storage tank back to a set of controlling electronics. The second component to the system is a controller, which is located some 50 meters away from the storage tank, and the tubing that we saw on the sensor is run into the controller, and we have feeding into the controller nitrogen, which is bubbled through the lines under the control of this set of electronics in here. And this part of the electronics is responsible for doing the actual measurement of the pressure, which is then converted to either height or volume in the storage tank. The third component to the system is a display which the user uses in order to instruct the controller to take a measurement. This could either be a computer, as we have in this case, or it could be a simple little panel, a very small desktop display. And the controller is capable of handling 8 tanks, so what the user does is he enters the number of the tank which he wishes to have the measurement made on. The controller begins to go through its actions, bubbling, in this case, nitrogen through the sensor, and when the measurement is finished, it will come up with 3 values: the volume of fluid stored in the tank, the ullage or the amount of empty volume in the tank, and the height of the fluid in the tank. In the advanced technology industry, the lifetime of a product with respect to no competition is very short. From the time you conceive of a product and maybe even acquire patents on it, you may have as long as 18 to 24 months before you will begin to see significant competition. So if you want to stay in the game, you have to be continuously evolving new products.
The development of all new products starts with a good idea. Jerry Huff is an engineer in Saskatoon who has a lot of ideas, but it's difficult to get funding to develop the prototypes. When everything works right, he takes an idea to a certain stage and then turns it over to a company such as Sci-Tech. Right now, he has 2 projects in the works. One, a security system. The second, a product designed for the transportation industry.
Its main purpose is to keep track of trucks on highways. Trucking companies, as well as governmental regulatory bodies, want to know certain things about truck transportation. In addition, the actual trucking companies themselves. This particular product employs a little box. This is the prototype box, and I'll demonstrate this in a minute, but think for a moment that we bolt this onto the bottom of a truck, semi-trailer type truck, and it then rolls down the highway with this little box bolted to it. When it passes a certain location in the road where we have some electronics buried in the road or buried in the ditch beside the road, this box will tell that electronics that truck number 123456 has just crossed that point at that particular time. And this kind of information is, as I said before, useful to a number of people, both in government and in the transportation industries. There is no reason why the information sent back couldn't be dynamic information or information about the truck itself. For instance, it may be a truck carrying hazardous goods, and that particular information could be programmed in at the time the truck was loaded, and you would then follow this hazardous goods, this truck with the hazardous goods through its route, know where it was at all times. These are the main components of the vehicle identification system. You could think or imagine for a moment that this component is mounted on a semi-trailer truck, and this particular component is buried in a roadway. Now, in the actual application, we wouldn't have a little digital readout on this. The information that this piece of equipment receives would be sent via telephone lines to a central computer. But to demonstrate the concept, as I said before, in prototyping, what we're trying to do is demonstrate the concept. This is the way I chose to do it. Let's imagine for a moment that the truck is coming down the highway, and this unit activates the little blue box that I showed you, the transponder. It activates that transponder, and the transponder sends back the number 123456. That happens to be the number of this particular transponder, and the system, the communication system, then knows that truck number 123456 came by that particular section of road at that particular time. There isn't any shortage of ideas with small companies or even large companies around Saskatoon. The big problem is basically in getting funding to demonstrate that in the first place, that the product is possible. I've been involved in a number of projects where we were able to demonstrate the feasibility of it, but after having demonstrated that, the companies didn't proceed with it because of financial reasons. I think it would be a fair assessment to say that probably 1 in 10 good ideas eventually get to the marketplace for various reasons, not just financial, other reasons as well.
There are also many enterprising young companies in Regina with exciting ideas and impressive products. One of them utilizes something familiar to all of us, the telephone.
The teledata talker is a box that connects between a computer and a phone line. And what it does, it allows a caller to call their computer and communicate with it. Our first version of the teledata talker will permit the computer to vocalize information, which it then translates into speech and sends over the phone line so the operator can hear it. The operator in turn communicates back to the computer via the touch-tone keypad. It could be used on a home computer. Very easily, you would simply plug into the computer's serial communications port and into the phone line. With a little program, depending on what you want to do, you can call your home computer and then control a number of things like lighting in your home, security checks, or just information. And you'd be able to get this information from virtually any phone in the world as long as it has a touch-tone keypad on it. You would simply go to a telephone, could even be a payphone, and you would phone the number that the device is attached to. The computer would then understand that a call is coming in, would see the rings coming in, and it would answer on a specified number of rings programmed by the user. The computer would then, for example, request an access code so that only a valid caller can get in on the system. Upon entering the correct access code, it would have a menu type structure where it would list different things that you could do, for example, the home security or the information access, and then you would simply respond by pressing the appropriate button in reply to the questions it asked. If, for example, you wanted to do a security check on your home, you can see if the windows are secure, the doors are secure. You can even check for other faults like, say, water in your basement, a fire detector. You can have a number of things wired into the system, into your computer.
Phone security mode, online doors and doors secure, water leakage in basement.
We have a general purpose controller we call the Basic 52M, and it's a single board controller which contains a number of input and output lines, and it also has a high-level language, the basic programming language, on board. This allows you to develop an application very rapidly and incorporate this board into a product in very short time. So if you have a low production run, 1,000 pieces or less, it would be economical to go this route. And we have used this product on this milling machine controller which we have built. And it has drastically reduced the research and development time by incorporating it. The controller itself simply does input-output type functions, so depending on a certain input, it'll do a certain output. In our milling machine controller, what we have done is we have replaced the 3 hand cranks to control the X, Y, and Z motion of the milling machine with motors. And this controller now controls these motors under instructions from the operator. And there's a milling machine programming language that we've developed that interfaces the machine operator to the machine itself. The idea behind this is that if you're doing any sort of production, it's ideal because the machine is ideal for repetitive type operations. So once the piece you're working on is programmed into the machine, it can do it forever without any alteration in the production of that piece. Research and development, we have found out, is very expensive. It costs a lot of money to develop a new product, but there's so much that has not been tapped in the world that we can probably spend all of our time just doing development work. But of course we cannot do that. We have to get out and market the products we develop to continue developing the new products.
The power driver, the power wheel, together at last in the most power-packed offer ever. Look, you get the world-famous power driver, the tool that made screwdrivers obsolete. Just take any screw and power it in fast and straight, without a scratch. Power driver even has a depth dial built right in. Leave the screw raised, set it flush, even countersink it. It's all automatic. Power Driver works with these tiny screws or a gut-wrenching monster like this. Just power it in or remove it just as easily. Power Driver can be yours now, along with the famous Power Wheel. It fits right on your drill to strip paint like magic. Forget those flimsy paper discs. Power Wheel won't crack or break, and even thick, crusty paint can't clog it. Run into a nail? Power Wheel slices it away, because it's more than just a sander. It cuts, too. Power Wheel glides through plexiglass, shapes tile, even chops through this masonry block. Use Power Wheel to sharpen a chisel or lawnmower blade. There are thousands of uses. Imagine both tools together in one power-packed offer. And as a special bonus, we'll give you Nail Driver. It drives home any nail with one simple push. Want more? You'll also get this 7-piece nut driver set. You get everything. The Power Driver, the Power Wheel, the Nail Driver, and the nut driver set. It's a once-in-a-lifetime offer, so order now.
To order COD or credit card, call 306-525-6661, or to save COD charges, send $29.95 check or money order plus $3 shipping and handling to Power Combo, P.O. Box 663, Regina, Saskatchewan, S4P 3A3. That's P.O. Box 663, Regina, Saskatchewan, S4P 3A3. Order your Power Combo now. Call 306-525-6661 anytime.
Our final story on A Fine Science is different from the other three. Although it uses a lot of highly sophisticated technology, it's the toxicology section of the RCMP forensic lab in Regina. It looks at exhibit materials to be presented as evidence in court. The lab tries to determine if drugs or poisons are present in the exhibit materials. John Hudson explains.
Forensic refers to the legal system. The word forensic toxicology implies that toxicology is done with one purpose in mind. Ultimately, your results may end up in the courts of the land. Toxicology is, of course, the study of drugs and poisons. So the work that we do is inclined towards analyzing exhibit material to find out if there is a drug or a poison present. If so, what it is, how much is there, and any possible significance. Most of the forensically significant work that we do pertains to impaired driving cases, where an individual, for example, in this illustration, may be driving down the highway in an erratic manner. He's weaving all over the highway, and an investigating officer, perhaps a member of the RCMP, apprehends this individual. He may logically think that there may be some alcohol involvement. Of course, a breathalyzer test ensues. The individual may have no alcohol in his system. Naturally, then one thinks there must be some other cause, and that's where we get involved to try to determine whether there is another component or constituent in that person's blood that may cause impairment. The drugs that we deal with, and we deal with some 400 separate drugs in the province of Saskatchewan, so you can see what kind of a large job we have. These drugs are organic in nature. That means simply that they contain carbon. As a result of that, these drugs are soluble in organic solvents, such as chloroform or ether. And that's the underlying principle that we use to pull the drug out of a blood sample. We use a solvent extraction. Typically, we deal with minute quantities, almost to the level that you cannot see it visually. If you think of a 1 gram quantity, that is part of a teaspoon, for example, and they break that down and take 1/1000th of that, you're dealing with 1 milligram. We typically deal with 1/1,000,000th of a gram, which is or less than 1/1,000,000th of a gram, which is a tiny amount. In the extraction stage, we take the blood sample, usually 1 ml of blood, 1 milliliter of blood, and we add a buffer solution, which is aqueous in nature. And this creates a solution that we then add the solvent to. And the solvent and the aqueous solution then interact. In fact, the solution is shaken on a shaker, and this allows the drug to pass from the aqueous portion into the organic portion, in this particular case, ether or ethyl acetate. Then that organic portion is drawn off after a centrifuging process, and it is evaporated down, leaving a residue in a tube, in a small test tube. Now that residue is reconstituted or redissolved in a small portion of solvent. The reason for this is to allow us to measure how much we're injecting into our instruments. The next stage is to do a screening process, which is basically detection. We want to detect whether there is a drug there. Now, we use, for that particular screening process, instruments referred to as gas chromatographs. This particular blood trace tells you that there are lots of normal components present in blood. There's one great big one here. This one is well known to us. This is caffeine. All our comparisons are done to this particular type of trace, to a blank, to a drug-free blood. Now, if we take the case sample from the impaired driving case where the Valium is suspected, and we compare the two of them, you'll see that you can virtually superimpose the two traces. And if we move it off a little bit, you'll see that really the only differences are in this particular area here. You'll see that there are 1, 2, 3 additional peaks as compared to the blood sample. This peak is a known compound that we add to every sample to make sure that we're doing the job properly. This is an internal standard. It allows us to assess the type of job that we've done on the blood sample. These two peaks are unusual. They are not in a normal blood. This would lead one to suspect that there is possibly a drug present in this particular sample. The traces are compared to drug-free blood traces. At that point, we have to confirm or identify the individual constituent or component. To do that, we use a process referred to as gas chromatography coupled to a specialized piece of equipment called a mass spectrometer. And that mass spectrometer allows us to look at spectral data which is unique to particular drugs. In this particular example that we're dealing with, an impaired driving case, for example on Valium, the mass spectral information is compared to known libraries which also contain the drug Valium, and the information is compared by the use of a computer. This saves us a lot of time and also is quite more accurate than visually examining these spectral traces.
The information on Valium is then compared again using the gas chromatograph process. The next step, interpretation.
Now we're at the interpretive stage of this process. As a forensic toxicologist, I must now determine the significance of the level of Valium that was found in this particular case. I would consult the reference data in scientific literature to arrive at my final opinion. Since this is an impaired driving case, I must decide whether the effects observed by the investigating officer at the time are consistent with the expected effects of this level of Valium on an individual. I must then be prepared to present my evidence in a court of law. This is one of the unique features of this job, in that we appear in court as expert witnesses, and it's only the expert witness who is allowed to provide opinion evidence to the courts.
I happen to think Mother's makes a perfect pizza. Authentic Chicago-style deep dish, or Mother's original style. Baked with fresh dough, made daily, fresh grated cheese, even fresh mushrooms, and done right from scratch. And the pasta's perfect, too. Now that is what I call good. Real good. Mother's pizza pasta made perfect.
Mother's is now open in Regina at 2037 Park Street at Victoria.
The Lube Tube, 1920 Francis Street, home of the 5-minute oil change. Drive in, no appointment necessary. And in 5 minutes or less, your vehicle will have a complete oil change with new oil and filter, grease job, and visual inspection of all fluid levels. If you don't have your oil changed regularly, you're saving a little time that could cost you a lot in the long run. There's no monkey business at the Lube Tube, just fast, efficient service. The Lube Tube, 1920 Francis Street, just north of Victoria.
Quality Records proudly presents Elaine Paige on Stages, England's first lady of the musical stage. With a collection of hits from the world's most famous musicals. Stages, a musical tour de force. Now in stores for the first time in North America, Elaine Paige on Stages from Quality Records.
That's Entertainment has put the spotlight on Panasonic TVs featuring state-of-the-art Quintrix 2 CompuFocus Picture Tube, the ultimate in viewing pleasure. Panasonic at special low prices from That's Entertainment in the Northgate Mall.
Which night is your favorite at Granny's? Monday, pizza. Tuesday, chicken and ribs. Wednesday, steak and shrimp. Thursday, barbecue chicken. Friday, from the sea. Saturday, New York steak. Sunday, veal cordon bleu. Which night is my favorite at Granny's? All of them.
And that's our program. We hope you've enjoyed this look at high tech, from the people who develop the ideas, through the people who make the products, to the people who use them. The next time you use a computer, watch the launch of a space shuttle, or read about a court case involving drugs or poisons, the ideas and work may have started right here in your own backyard. I'm Holly Preston for A Fine Science.
This is CBC Television.